All right. Well, I thought I was ready, and then I wasn't ready, and now I'm ready to start tonight's live show. How is everybody out there? This is, of course, Unfound Live for April 14th of 2025. And I think what I'm saying is if you don't have your taxes done by now, well, I hope you filed that extension, because I don't know if you're going to be able to listen to the podcast in jail. All I'm saying. I have a fantastic show lined up for you tonight. As you can see, at least by the headline, I'm going to, as you can see, I'm going to talk about the Springfield 3. I'm just not really just picking the women disappearances of those women out of the air. And in fact, CNN.com within the last few days did a very long article on their disappearances for whatever reason. I don't think it's the anniversary right now, not yet. And for some reason, and thought, well, as good a time as any. I'm going to guess that I've talked about the disappearance of the Springfield 3 before, but being that I can't remember specifically doing it means it's been quite a while. And so this will give me a chance to revisit it and refresh everybody's memories on it. And maybe even one of these days, maybe we will feature those disappearances on the podcast. We'll just have to see. I know that I've not attempted, don't think I've attempted to reach out to either the families involved in the disappearances. I don't know if Emily has or not. I don't think I have. Maybe early on in Unfound's existence, but I'm just not thinking that I have for whatever reason. But that's on the agenda. Also want to talk about this Las Vegas veterinarian who has gone missing after being caught on video. Also want to talk about this Kansas City boy who was identified after 50 years, and just seems to me to be something a little odd about it, about how that all happened. But I'll get into that. And then I, of course, have many other things on the agenda tonight. Maybe I'll get to some of it. Maybe I'll get to all of it. We'll just have to see how the next 2 hours goes. Over the next 2 hours, as you are watching and listening, please give this live show a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button down there in the bottom right-hand corner if you are watching on YouTube, if you're not yet a subscriber. If you'd like to support what we do here, patreon.com/Unfound Podcast or paypal.me/Unfound Podcast. While you are partaking in the live show tonight, you could hit the super chat button if you'd like to donate that way to the important work we do here. And if you are watching on YouTube tonight, maybe instead you want to hit the join button, and you will get some things on YouTube that everybody else does not. So you can check that out. Let's see who is in here. We're 5 minutes in. Let's see who's lined up so far. Nephew Charles, what's going on? Good to see you. Hung out with your Uncle Brian. I'll get into that in a second. This past weekend. Everything, how are you? Suzanne, Deborah, what's going on? Amy. Jean, hello to you, or Jeannie maybe. Fishing, good to see you. Sarah, good to see you as well. It was a pleasure to see you in the think tank last night as well, Sarah. Stephanie, Lisa, Dee Dee, Neighborly, Michelle, Rockford, what's going on with you? Good to see all of you tonight. Thank you for making time on this Monday night. So what has been going on with me when you last saw me? Of course, you heard me for the update episode on Friday. But since you saw me last, what is going on? As I just stated a few moments ago, I went over and hung out with my brother Brian on Friday into Saturday. Some of you, or hopefully maybe all of you, remember that my brother and his wife have moved. They used to live about 20 minutes from me, and now they live more like an hour, over an hour from me. Of course, depending on when you want to drive over there, could easily be over an hour, depending. They moved over to Polk City, which is about halfway between where I am in Orlando, just off the I-4. And in fact, I think it's probably not that right, but they almost live close enough to the I-4 that you can hear the cars going down the highway back and forth. Maybe it's kind of that close. Maybe it's not quite that close, but it's not too far, just north of the I-4, the main highway between Tampa and Orlando. They moved over there. They moved into a complex, a gated complex, huge complex community that is reserved for only people who own big RVs. You have to have like a Class C or Class A motorhome to live in there. And so you have like these little houses with these big garages, not actually with doors on them, but overhangs or canopies or whatever you want to call it, that they can park their RVs under. And in fact, the driveway and pad that my brother and his wife have, big enough you could fit 2 of their RVs in it, on it, and theirs is like 40 feet long, so that gives you an idea of it. And so their entire RV sits under this canopy, under this roof, and their place that they just bought is right there. It's a tiny place, but when you're inside it, you really don't get that feeling. It has a main bedroom and a spare bedroom and kitchen and all of these things. Has a front door and a side door. And it has a detached kind of little shed type of area with an upstairs like attic. And it's really nice. So I went over there. I'd not seen it before. And I drove over there on Friday morning. I got up, went to the gun range, got a little shooting in. And then I drove over there, and my brother and I got to tell you, after showing me around, and we kind of just sat on the him and his chair, and the other chair, probably the chair that his wife usually uses, and we just watched baseball and golf from like the afternoon until 11:30 at night when I went to bed. Just kind of sat there, made some sandwiches. I brought some Twizzlers along, big bag of Twizzlers, and we just sat there, BS'd, and that was about it. It was a lazy Friday, and it was a good time. And his wife wasn't there. She actually came back over here to Pinellas County. Her oldest daughter turned 40, so they were having a birthday celebration. And so she was over here all weekend, so I decided to go out there. And we just had a good time, just sitting around, doing nothing, watching the Masters, which we really enjoyed, and watched some Pirates baseball, and then we turned on another game, I think, as well, to watch after the Pirates were done. The Pirates lost to the Reds that night. And then I went to bed about 11:30, got up the next day. We got in his truck, and for like a half hour, we just drove around. That's how big it is. Kind of just drove around, looking at the different places, looking at these different RVs that all of his neighbors have. And they have different gazebos, like little gathering areas. So if you want to hold a party, you can do it there. And there's like a little canal and a lake that runs throughout the whole thing. I mean, I don't know how many different lots there are in that place, but it's not small. And I can see why they moved there. It's really nice. It's really quiet. They live like right at this intersection that it seems like everybody has to go by, but it's not loud or everything. Everybody, a lot of people have the golf carts and they're cruising around and with their dogs in the passenger seat. But it's not like, I want you to get an idea, like it's not like the Villages, where it's like its own town. It's not like that. It's just privately owned, a big complex. I don't know. Does it have 200 lots in there? Maybe. Could be more than that. So it's pretty big. And so we just cruised around and, Brian has gotten really, being that this is now the second RV they have, he's really knows a lot about RVs now. And so we'll go by a place and he'll be telling me about that particular kind of RV and the pluses and minuses of it and how it compares to the one that they now have. And so it's very interesting to me. And so we just had a good time just riding around for a while. And then we came back to his place and he went over to Lowe's and he was gone quite a while. I got some podcast work done. I took like a 10-minute snooze and then he came back and we watched more golf. And then maybe around 6 that evening, I jumped in my car and came back to my place here. And the drive wasn't too bad until got into Pinellas County. Then it was really, really busy over here. Wow. I-4 was not busy that bad at all. But once I got across the causeway into Pinellas County, man, everything just backed up. It was crazy. So I eventually got home and I've been home ever since. But so I've now seen my brother's place. Really nice. I can see why they made the move. They've not sold their house yet though over here. But the next plan, hopefully it's going to happen, fingers crossed, is brother Michael, who lives in Pennsylvania, is supposed to be coming down here in early May. And we are supposed to take an RV trip to Key West, which of course would be going south that way. South of here, go right down there to Miami and then take Route 1 the whole way out to the end there in the RV. So the brothers were supposed to take an RV trip sometime in early May. So a little less than a month from now. Hoping that's going to happen. That could be a lot of fun. So it's really what I mean. That's what I did with Brother Brian. And how you may be wondering, how did I sleep over there? Not great. Maybe got 5.5 hours of sleep. Just the way things are right now. It's the first chance I've had to sleep in a different bed since I started, of course, my sleep therapy back in January. Strange bed, strange surroundings. I'm not too sad about how I slept, but I would admit I had a great time over there, and of course, love to go over there again and hang out. But it was good to come back to my own bed on Saturday night and get about almost 8 hours of sleep. So my sleep has been good, not perfect. Couple like last Tuesday, Monday night after the live show last week was not a good sleep night. So Tuesday was a little rough, but that was probably the worst day this week. The rest of it's been okay. Still working towards, still seems like I can sleep deeper. I'm getting enough minutes or hours of sleep. I just think that my sleep can be deeper, and we're still working toward that. So that's where my sleep is, and I don't want to talk too much about it because then that puts my mind on it. And but I did have another session with my sleep therapist this morning, and that's where I am trying to think like getting back to thinking and feeling like a good sleeper. I think that I'm still bringing a little bit of anxiety to the bed when I go to sleep. And I think that's a factor. So other than that, the Masters, watched it on Sunday as well. I'm not a big Rory McIlroy fan, so not, wasn't, I was actually hoping Bryson would win, but that didn't happen. He didn't play very well. So Rory won. He has the career Grand Slam now. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of Rory McIlroy. To me, there's a bit of smugness to him or something that turns me off. And I also, it's not liked his attitude toward all the golfers that went and played on the Live Tour and all that. I think that was uncalled for. So, but he won it. What are you going to do? Almost choked it away. I was hoping he was going to choke it away, but he didn't. In trivia, the funny thing on Wednesday was that it was me, this guy Scott, who's been a regular for many, many years, and just like myself. And we had a new guy. He got a fellow teacher to come join us. So there were just three of us, and one of those guys, one of the players was new, and we still ended up winning on Wednesday. There were still 20-some teams there, like 121 people, and we were a team of 3 and 1. We needed to go to a tiebreaker to win, but we won it, just the 3 of us. So that it was pretty nice. So that's really been about it. Dad's doing well, and that's really, really, it's been, other than that, just been, that's just how things have been. I don't think anything other big noteworthy has happened other than that. So let's see what everybody is saying here. Rockford, hello. D, what's going on with you, D? Everybody should know Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern, I'll be getting together with Dia again to do true crime trivia. I realize that's in the afternoon, maybe a little inconvenient for many of you, but if you can't catch it live, maybe you can catch it on the replay. Craig, how are you doing? Good to see you coming to us from Facebook. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Mary Jane, Cranky. Charles, yeah, that ought to be interesting going, to Key West. Yeah, it should be. In the RV. We'll see where everybody's going to sleep in it. Charlie, we'll just have to figure that out and see if I can sleep in an RV. Rockford, RV is very popular in my town. When we bought our place, my realtor expressed her surprise that we didn't have one. Maybe someday. Yeah, well, my brother and his wife didn't get theirs until they were 70. Of course, they'd been talking about it for a while, Rockford. And my brother really studied up on, what to get, what to avoid. And I'm going to guess 3 years. They bought that first one in 2022, I think. 2022, maybe early 2023. But I'm going to guess they were working on that since 2019. Trying to make sure they made a good buy. And then after all that, it gets flooded with the hurricane, the second hurricane, the second one. But now they have another one, and they of course bought that one much more quickly. Took lesser time, simply because at that point they knew what they were, how to, navigate all of that. So they didn't get theirs till they're 70. And even Brian even brought that up this past weekend, that a lot of the people that they're meeting over in this community, they've been in the RV community for years and years and years. Whereas my brother and his wife, very, very new to it. Cranky woke up at 10:09 this morning. My 2 phones went nuts. Emergency alerts that my apartment building started violently shaking for about 10 seconds. So you must be out there in California, Cranky. Was scary. Could hear, could hear the rumbling. I saw that hit down there near San Diego, but I do understand that people up in LA and of course going inland could also feel that. Yeah, that was a big one. But those earthquakes, there's so many factors of whether it's going to be destructive or not. Of course, how powerful is it? Where does it happen? How far underground does it happen? A lot of different factors. But I'm not saying, that there was a lot of damage. Cranky says you could hear the rumbling. Yeah. D says you should have known one of mine. I'm not sure what that means, D. Rockford, I was down in LA, South Bay for work today. Cranky, sure felt it. Okay. See, I've been watching RV videos for a long time. Oh, you should have known one of mine. See, I've been watching RV videos for a long time. All right. Gotcha, D. Yeah, my brother and his wife are now part of that community. And I think after we go down to Key West, it's going to be kind of a shakeout period for the RV. And then I think my brother and his wife will go on a pretty long trip, probably in the beginning or middle of May. They may be gone for a month, even a lot longer than that. We'll just have to see on that. But that's really about it going on with me. Trying to think if I'm forgetting anything. Beginning out and throwing the discs. Went out yesterday morning, went out this morning. Doing a little singing practice. I haven't talked about that for a while. The big problem with singing is sleep is so important to be able to sing well and for your voice and everything. Of course, sleep's important for a lot of things. But when you're not sleeping right, it's hard to sing well. And I've certainly noticed that at least a little bit. But, I'm continuing to work at it. And I am getting better. Just my patience is not one of my qualities. So I tend to get a little anxious and things aren't happening as fast as I would like. But that's what's going on. It's got anybody just came from a 2.5 hour. You just came from a 2.5 hour singing practice, Stephanie. What were you singing? Everybody wants to know, Stephanie. And Amy says San Diego here. All right. So we got some people in the audience that felt a decently large earthquake today. Luckily, not very destructive. Craig and Rockford, I'm in East County, San Diego. It felt surreal. I had no idea what to do. Initially, it was about 3 or 4 seconds of panic and then waited it out. I've only ever felt one earthquake in my life. That would have been October of 99. October 1999. When I was in Las Vegas. I was living on East Tropicana, right there near Tropicana and Mountain Vista. That was the first apartment I lived in that complex. I ended up living in 3 different ones there. A 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, and then I went back to a 1-bedroom. But it was the first one. And I can remember waking up. It must have been like 3 a.m. or something. And I was like, why are the window shades, the blinds, why are they rippling? Why are they doing that? Did I leave a window open? Is that the wind? What's going on? And then I realized that my bed was shaking too. And of course, I'm on the 2nd floor, so it's going to be a little even more pronounced. And, and I don't think any buildings in Las Vegas are earthquake rated or anything. But it was going like that, going back and forth. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is an earthquake. And so the things were shaking, the bed was shaking, and then it went away. I think I ended up finding out later that the center of it was like up near Pahrump, and it was, what was it, 3 point? I could go back and check. It was like a 3.2 on the Richter scale or something like that. But it is weird. It was real weird, but that's the only time I've ever felt one. Of course, back in the day, like early 2000s, even with the work that I had going up to about 2009, I was down in Southern California fairly often, sometimes for days at a time. Just never. Maybe there were some, I just didn't feel them. So the only one I've ever felt is when I was in Las Vegas. And of course, we don't get earthquakes here in Florida. And Stephanie says, I was singing in a women's chorus. Good for you, Stephanie. That sounds like fun. Amy's in downtown San Diego. Hello, CRG. How are you? What's going on? Good to see you. Thanks for joining in tonight. All right, let's get to tonight's items. I'm just going to start with a little reflection on update episode number 20. As I stated in the episode, usually those are reserved for the end of the month, the end of April, the end of August, the end of December. But given that, frankly, I've had some guests that have just been flaky. There's no two ways about it. I'm not going to name any names or anything. Luckily, I did a fantastic interview before tonight's live show started. You'll be hearing it Friday. I'll talk about that later. But I've had some conversations. I had an interview lined up. I don't know what it is. Here in 2025, people seem to be a little more even flakier than usual. I mean, we've certainly, over the last 8.5 years, between myself and Emily, who's now back, by the way, she was down here for a few days. You know that. She's back to work now. It was great seeing her last Monday. But between us, we run into our fair share of flaky people over the past 8.5 years. But it just seems here in 2025, they've been overtly so. And it makes it tough, especially when, they do things like we do, where I don't like interviewing somebody like 2 months before an episode's going to come out. There's just something about that. It seems, I don't know. It's certainly, if you can line up interviews that far in advance, I can see why people do it. Just don't want people to feel like they're on some assembly line, like we're stacking interviews or something. It just sounds so impersonal, I guess. So that's why the interviews take place close to when they're going to come out. But then it's also why if you get a flake here, a flake there, a no call, no show, I as the person who runs the podcast, I have to start scrambling. So we had somebody that flaked, and that's why the update episode came out this past Friday. Like I said, though, already got the interview done for this Friday, and pretty sure the interview is going to be taking place, another one on Wednesday, which will then be for the Friday almost 2 weeks from now. So, maybe we are back on schedule with that. But my reflections on number 20, of course, not a ton of updates, but there were some considerable ones when it came to the Unfound Now episodes that come out here on YouTube every month with Tyler Goodrich and Belvedere and the man who went missing in Mesa Verde. Actually was to Mesa Verde National Park way back in 1985 with my parents. But no surprises in any of them. I think I did some pretty decent commentary on all of the updates, but when we have updates where we actually have resolutions, that does give me an opportunity to give more an in-depth idea of what I thought happened. And in all three of those, not surprised. Maybe I'm a little surprised that Tyler Goodrich hung himself, but I didn't think that he was alive. I thought that he would be found fairly close to where he lived. Like I said, I guess I got it mostly right, not totally right. But if somebody would have told me that if they thought, I think Tyler ran off and committed suicide somewhere, I think, I think that's a good possibility. Why? We got into this in the think tank last night, patreon.com/unfound podcast. If you'd like to join the think tank. I think we came to pretty much a conclusion. There was probably more going on with Tyler Goodrich than just him running away from the cops because he slapped or hit his husband. Inclined to believe that he had other things going on that had nothing to do with his relationship or being a father or anything else. And this might have been just what happened that night, kind of the straw that broke the camel's back kind of thing. Maybe the combination of a lot of things that have been stacking up. I have no proof of this, but we also have to remember that, what he did, of course, the cops got called. I don't know how bad a penalty it was really going to be, especially if his husband eventually dropped the charges or something. But if Tyler's thinking, man, I did this and our marriage is falling apart, and now because I did this, then he's going to get custody of the kids, and I may never see, you start catastrophizing is what they call it in psychology. You start thinking that nothing but the worst is going to happen in every phase of your life. Well, that's one of the reasons people commit suicide. They see no hope. They see no positive. That everything has a downside. The future looks very dark. So, but very sad, but not surprising. It just shows you, at least I continue to say this. Of course, I don't know every police department in the entire United States, but the police department local to Tyler Goodrich, thinking that they thought somebody was like hiding him or something, that was in that news story. That's crazy. Tyler Goodrich wasn't a career criminal. He wasn't a gangbanger on the run from the law or anything like that, where he might have other gang members who are going to hide him. It just shows you, out of touch, kind of, to me when I read something like that. So there you go. And of course, with Belvedere and the other man, I didn't write his name in the notes. Not surprising at all. Belvedere ended up way out in the middle of nowhere, seemingly, I guess, wrecked her car. Maybe, who knows what she was going through, and she died out there, maybe of exposure or something. Didn't know where she was. She's 90-some years old. Very sad. But I also think most likely she should not have been driving in the first place. So it's just some of my reflections on, once again, not the longest update episode I've ever done. Some of those have gone over 3 hours. We did have some, I guess, a little bounce back with some resolutions to some disappearances, but they were all of the Unfound Now variety, not of the Unfound podcast variety. So we'll keep our eyes peeled for all new updates through the summer, and the next update episode will come up in August later this year. Moving on, something that did not get included in the update episode because it hadn't happened yet, but this weekend there was another search for Jason Landry out there in Wooling, Texas. No signs of him. They came up empty again. It's just, I admit I'm not stumped. I'm not stumped. I really think that I have a really, really good handle on Jason's disappearance. Of course, it was an Unfound episode. His father came on, and some of you have been around long enough know that 4 years ago now, 4 years ago, I went on with John Lorden on his YouTube channel, where he and I, as John's assistant, interviewed Jason's father. And then later, the father came on and I interviewed him for an episode of Unfound, maybe a year later or something like that. I continue to insist that Jason has to be in that surrounding area, not too far away from where his car got wrecked. I know that sounds like a slap in the face to everybody who's gone and done these searches over the last how many years. And I don't mean to offend these people, but I still believe that. And easy for me to talk. I'm not there. I'm not trying to be a know-it-all. I'm really, 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 really not trying to do that. But we have to understand that, there were many houses there. It doesn't seem like Jason went to any of them. I realize there's going to be people out there. Well, Jason went to one of these houses and maybe he got shot and now somebody covered it up. I'm not saying it's never happened. I can remember some years ago, there was that story about on Halloween, kids went to the wrong house or something and got shot dead. Mistakes happen. Just doesn't, especially being this phone was left behind, everything. I continue to believe that Jason had some sort of head injury and walked off. And, very much like Caleb Harris, who ended up being found down in that sewer. Of course, Daniel Villarreal in somebody's pool house in the backyard of somebody didn't know. It's going to end up being something like that. I got to believe. On the other hand, unless you're going to tell me that while they're doing these searches, there are many, many people in that area with private property that won't allow searches to go on their private property, which I guess is possible. And then we have like a Brandon Lawson situation. Somewhere within all of that is the resolution to Jason's disappearance. Pretty sure. But then I don't know how many people were out there. Maybe I just read like a very quick blurb. I don't know how many people were out there. I don't know where they went. I don't know how long they were out there, but there were searches done. Again, nothing was found. See what everybody is saying. D says, you have earthquakes in Oklahoma. So I've heard, D. So I've heard. CRG, I'll tell you great news about a case from California in the San Jose area. Yeah, put it in the comments there, CRG. Don't let me stop you. Amy said she just doxed herself. Okay. Talking about the earthquake. Rockford says, I think Landry is going to be another Brandon Lawson, like I just brought up, close to previous searches and on private property. Cranky99 says, Jason had a head injury, sat in his car for several minutes. Hypothermia started setting in. He got out of his car, started taking off his article of his clothes, wandered off. His close by. It seems very sensible to me. Common scenario. We know the effects of head injuries. We know the effects of hypothermia. Those are all well documented. And the only difference is 99-point-something% of the time, these people are found. We're just looking at one. You're going to have one of those once in a while. Just the odds just say so. And I know it sucks for his family and his friends and all the searchers who have come up empty. But even though I'm being critical, I guess I want you to know. I like it that you're going out there and searching, but I would continue to search a mile in every direction, mile radius, I guess it would be, from the car. And anything outside of that is probably a waste of time. I'm going to stick by that. So Jason Landry update. I want to tell all of you, of course, I've already told you about, I'm going to appear with my friend D on her trivia show. We're supposed to do it tomorrow, but some things came up. We're going to instead do it on Thursday, 3:00 Eastern. And I'm sure that D will send me a link and I will post that on the page in the discussion group. If you'd like to watch D stump me again with all of her trivia questions. I feel smart about true crime until D starts asking me questions, and then I don't feel so smart. But you keep dishing them out, D, and I'll just roll with the punches. Also on Thursday, though, I am going to be appearing with Dr. Telesco again. And And I will be talking about From Disappearance to Discovery of Austin Pivo. That's, of course, one of Unfound's disappearances that ended up being a murder. And went back, found all my notes that I took back at that time. That was, what, 5 years ago that we covered that? Maybe more than that now, maybe. That we featured that disappearance. And when else also got the interview outline. So I've put together what I will be discussing. And, what kind of disappearance do I view Austin's as? Well, I think I always thought it was kind of a murder. But I don't know if I could have ever predicted that it was his coworkers. I mean, they went to trial. They've been found guilty. They tried to say it was self-defense. That defense did not work for them, and they all went to jail, a variety of lengths of sentence, depending. And there was a tip that came in, and Austin was found. They were charged, and now they're in jail. But things seemingly went really, really wrong that morning. So I'm going to go over all of that. Also going to be talking about how do we apply Austin Pivo's murder, disappearance, then murder, that we now know is a murder, to other types of cases. What should we be looking for? What are the signs that something is actually a murder and it's not as they tried to portray it? Well, Austin walked off or somebody came and picked him up. How do we quickly determine the difference? Can you do that? I continue to say one of the big problems with disappearance investigations right now is that the investigators don't know it when they see it. Just going back to the Tyler Goodrich example, that Tyler runs off and the police are saying, while they're doing searches and everything, well, we think somebody's hiding him. We think he's hiding out somewhere. Anybody with any disappearance experience would know that that most likely was not the case. The probabilities certainly did not lean in that direction at all. You have to know these things when you see it. You have to know a Tyler Goodrich type of disappearance when you see it, and to know what the most probable, thing, what can you say is the most probable theory. So with Austin Pivo, how do you look at a disappearance? Because we have a lot of those like that. Somebody gets dropped off somewhere, and then later everybody says, I don't know, he just took off. What can we say? Yeah, he was here, and then he walked out the door, and then he wasn't. And the tough part is that a lot of that time, that is what exactly happens. Somebody gets dropped off somewhere, walks off, never to be seen again. On the other hand, there is those times when people get dropped off somewhere at a party, they go inside, something happens, somebody gets murdered, the murder gets covered up, and then later the suspects say, I don't know, he came in here, he was here 10 minutes, then he walked off, we don't know what happened. How do you decipher all of that? It's very difficult, but it can be done. So we're going to talk about that on Dr. Telesco's show on Thursday. So I hope you'll tune in 7 p.m. Eastern over on, I call it her channel, but technically it's not. It's the Fischler College of Education and School of Criminal Justice YouTube channel. Please subscribe to that, by the way. Subscribe to that channel. Go watch some of the videos. Give them a thumbs up. But we're also, because Dr. Telesco sent me a text on this. Of course, anybody who knows Dr. Telesco well knows that she's really into animals, especially horses. And then that's, in fact, why she moved, so she could have a couple horses. If you follow her on Facebook, she loves posting pictures about her horses and pets and everything. That's why she moved. And so when this veterinary story from Las Vegas about this veterinarian kicking this horse in the head, that really caught her attention, and she sent me the article, and I had already known about it. So I said, hey, let's talk about it, because the guy is now missing. So we're going to talk about that situation on Thursday as well. So we'll talk about Austin Piva for a while, and then we'll leave like 10, 15 minutes to discuss this veterinarian's disappearance. Because it seems that he got videoed kicking this horse in the head. A lot of people found out about this video. He tried to defend himself, and then before you know it, he was gone, and his car was found out at Lake Mead. And I should say in the Lake Mead recreational area. And that happened, was it a week ago or something now? I forget the date. But it's been a while. He's still missing. And there were a lot of threats being thrown at him. A lot of animal lovers not happy about what he was doing there. Certainly something that nobody should be doing. And I'm not sure that the explanation he gave goes along with what you see in the video. On the other hand, sometimes people take things out of context. I'm not saying you should ever kick a horse. On the other hand, if you feel like the horse is attacking you, then you got to do what a horse could easily kill you. Could easily kill a person. Kicking a person, stomping a person, falling on the person. I mean, there's a lot of ways that a horse could really, really hurt a human. But for the people who have seen the video, thought that kick was uncalled for. So we're going to talk about all of that on Thursday evening with Dr. Telesco. So I'm going to have a busy Thursday. I'm going to be with Dee, and then I'm going to be with Dr. Telesco at 7 o'clock. And you're saying also, his is a MMIP case. He says, "Oh, Ed, I got rolled over on." I'm sure that was not fun. D. All right, let's get to, I think, reason maybe a lot of you anticipating this live show tonight was because of the first item in the headline tonight, which is the Springfield 3. There's, of course, 3 women, a mother, her daughter, and the daughter's friend, who went missing from Springfield, Missouri, not Springfield where the Simpsons live. There's a bunch of Springfields in the United States, but this is Springfield, Missouri. They went missing sometime in the evening or night, maybe even into the next day, June 7th of 1992. And as I stated early on, I think that I've talked about their disappearances before, but it's been a while. It's been a while. I'm sure many of you maybe might not have even known about Unfound or the Unfound live show at the time. And like I said, recently there's been an article. So I'm going to read some of the facts just from the Charlie Project. I know many of you are familiar with it. I'm not going to read the whole thing. And then I'm just kind of go through what I've read, some of the news articles, what the CNN article said, what some other articles have said, and give you my insight, much like I've done on Jennifer Cassie or, the Zodiac Killer. That's what I'm going to do. So I'll just go over the general facts by starting here. Cheryl and her daughter, Suzanne Streeter, resided in the 1700 block of East Delmar Street in Springfield, Missouri. And I did look at a map, by the way, in preparation for this. In 1992. Suzanne graduated from Kickapoo High School, great name. During the evening of June 6, 1992, she spent the early part of the evening having dinner at home with her mother. Suzanne and her friend Stacy McCall, who is also missing, planned to spend the night at a hotel in Branson, Missouri. They decided to stay at another friend's house in Battlefield, Missouri instead. Suzanne called Cheryl, her mother, at approximately 10:30 p.m. to discuss their plans. Cheryl telephoned a friend. Once again, this is the mother. Telephoned a friend at approximately 11:15 p.m. So they're putting together this timeline of that evening. She was painting a chest of drawers at the time and gave no indication that anything was amiss inside her residence. Suzanne and Stacy returned to Cheryl's residence at approximately 2:15 a.m. on June 7th after deciding that their friend's home was too crowded. So they went to Battlefield, and that seemingly didn't work out. They get home at 2:15 a.m. I'm not sure how they figured that all out, but I'm just going to trust what Megan has written at the Charlie Project. They plan to meet other friends at Whitewater Amusement Park in Branson later that day. So they were supposed to go to Branson, nixed that, went over to a friend's house, too busy, and then came home. The girls drove their separate cars to Cheryl's house. Neither they nor Cheryl have been heard from again. Neighbors did not hear any suspicious activity near Cheryl's home during the overnight hours. And if you check a map, there is a house the next door. But on the other side is kind of a business. The house only sat like a half a block off a main road that was mainly like businesses and things. One of the girls' friends phoned and visited Cheryl's residence several times during the day in an attempt to locate the three women. McCall's family alerted authorities about the disappearances during the evening of June 7th. All of the women's personal belongings were discovered inside the house. Their vehicles were also parked at the home, so I'm guessing 3 cars. Cheryl's bed appeared, and it does have a, at least now it does. I don't know what it did 30-some years ago. Had one of those circular driveways, so you didn't have to, back out, semicircular, so you could pull around and just go out like a half-circle driveway. Certainly room for 3 cars. Cheryl's bed appeared to have been slept in during the previous night. Her eyeglasses were beside her bed, and a book had been turned over, indicating that Cheryl may have been interrupted while reading. The family's Yorkshire Terrier, Cinnamon, was still inside the house and appeared to be anxious. All of Cheryl's, if only dogs could talk, right? All of Cheryl's personal belongings were untouched, and the television was turned on. There were no signs of a struggle at the residence, but the porch light had been shattered. No additional physical evidence was discovered at the scene. Authorities now believe that the broken glass from the porch light may have provided clues about the disappearances. A friend of the girl swept the shards into the garbage, unaware that he was discarding possible evidence at the time. So we have a situation where they go missing. Everybody's trying to figure out what happened. Well, everybody's tramping in and outside of that house, maybe moving things around, opening and closing doors, maybe opening the refrigerator, see if there's anything to eat, on and on and on, cleaning up the place. And, of course, destroying what we might think might be evidence. Only thing we can say for sure, I think, is that even if they cleaned up some things inside the house, whatever that means, I'm thinking that they wouldn't have touched anything that was obvious violence within the house. All right, that would not be something that was missed. As far as this porch light on the outside, could be something. But I'm not surprised that somebody cleaned that up. All we know is surely there was no blood, inside, splattered all over the place, nothing like that. So there was nothing obvious that a fight or a struggle or an abduction, an attack, anything like that happened inside the house, which I think is noteworthy. I mean, we do have 3 women missing. So it very well may be that the crime scene was messed up, but I still don't believe there were signs of foul play that somehow, get put back in place or something. If they had walked in there and, a couch was turned over or a lamp was turned over or something, they would have said something by now. I think that would be public by now. Being that there's nothing like that, I have to believe there wasn't necessarily anything violent that went on inside the house. So there's that. Cranky says the purses were all in a pile next to the back door. The daughter's car was parked in a way it was never parked before. Okay. But the thing is, Cranky, we have to remember, did this person who say it was never parked like that before, would this person be privy to every single time that girl ever parked there? It's something we have to remember. I'm not trying to be picky, but we just have to remember things like that. All we know is the cars were there. There's no signs that anything was stolen out of the cars, no violence regarding the cars. It's not like the car was parked awkward out in the middle of the street. anything like that. So here is what some of the things that jump out at me, and although they were included in the Charlie Project article, I am just going, I didn't get to them, but there were sightings. There were allegedly a sighting that the mother was seen driving a green van. This whole green van comes up in a variety of permutations, and I'm rejecting all of it. There was a sighting allegedly of maybe the mother or the girls at a restaurant. I'm rejecting all sightings. This kind of reminds me controversially of Sherry Mahan's disappearance in Pennsylvania in 1985, near where I grew up, where allegedly there was this van with a skier on the side that was seen. And I will be honest, I've gotten to the point where I reject that actually happened. I realize people just take people's eyewitnesses and sightings is 100% truth. I think that we've done enough disappearances on Unfound to know that it shouldn't be. And in fact, the FBI has done studies on this. Eyewitness testimony is not reliable. So when I start hearing about this van and the mother's driving it, it was in the area, and all the stuff that has been brought up regarding this van, and there have been a couple guys' names who have been, out there and everything, I reject all the sightings. I am under the firm belief that for whatever reason that these three women left that house, probably taken away, that they were not seen again. Pretty sure. Okay. Now, Craig says, I think the porch light globe being broken could have meant something. The globe is the same height as a person's head, almost like one of them bumped it to get attention. That's a possibility. Not sure how I feel about the green van. I've heard about a policeman collection. How could just one person, not being law enforcement, adopt three women at once? I'll tell you exactly how. You should look up, maybe you already know, Cranky, Oba Chandler, right here, coincidentally, in the Tampa area, who killed three women. Coincidentally, a mother, was it two daughters, or mother, daughter, and daughter's friend? So it can happen. Of course, he eventually got caught, luckily because of something that the mother had written down on a piece of paper that was left in her car that eventually led them to him. But Oba Chandler, if you want to look that up, he was eventually executed here in Florida. That was some years ago. That was before I moved here. But the smashed light bulb, as you know, could be something. It could be nothing. I think people think it's something because nobody can explain why that would have been done. And you would have to know somebody who's really familiar with the house to just make sure, well, was the light bulb like that? Did that just happen that night, or it had been that way and they just hadn't cleaned it up? So there's that. So the smashed light bulb, even if it had been left there, could they have gotten fingerprints off of it? Could they have gotten DNA off it? It seems unlikely, but it could be an opportunity missed. I guess what I'm saying is, even if they have left the smashed light bulb, shards, or whatever on the ground, I think this disappearance would still be unsolved. I don't think it is as being a major miss on their part. The timing is interesting. Rockford says abduction doesn't occur when only one car is parked in the driveway. It happened when three cars. I know, unusual. Rodney, hello, Rodney. How are you? Local. My mom's best friend was the one that gave the tip to catch Oba Chandler. Okay, Rodney. Yep, Rodney is local here in Pinellas County, right, Rodney? But what I remember is there was something about the woman, the mother who ended up getting killed. The story was that they were looking for somebody to take them out in the boat to go like on a sunset cruise, and they ran into Oba Chandler somewhere, and he gave them directions and the description of the boat or something like that, and she wrote it down. Well, that was still in the car when they found the car at the marina, and that led them to him. That's what I remember but I've not read about that in years. Nurse Ratchet says Carrie Stainer did it too, killed multiple women. Okay. Chandler did work for her as a handyman and gave her a receipt, and she saw the billboard with the handwriting. Okay, Rodney, well, that's fantastic. Cranky, what about the construction happening next to the shopping area where they buried under a couple feet of concrete and dirt like how the device they used in the parking garage? No, I don't think so. No, I really don't think so, Cranky. This is, once again, this seems like, somebody just planned this all out and just happened to do it next. It just sounds too complicated to me. Not to mention, despite what everybody thinks about people being buried in buildings and everything, how often does that end up being true? Not very often. And I think putting one body in a building would be tough enough. 3, I guess it's possible that this is just not where I'm leaning. So I come to this. Why take them? Why abduct them? Nurse Raj says a stupid tip about parking garage. I'm not doing psychic stuff. So the way we have to look at this is, why take them? Now, we do have a disappearance and Unfound's catalog that you could say is kind of similar to this, and that is Laura Bible and Ashley Freeman. They were there at the house. These drug people show up. We know the Freeman parents get shot. And the bad guys take the girls away. And if we're to believe it, torture them, rape them, and kill them. And their bodies are still out there. Remains are out there, still somewhere, 25 years later, haven't been found. My perception, though, on their disappearances is that they certainly did not know, that could have predicted that Laura Bible, the friend of the daughter, would be there. And I'm even wondering, did those 3 guys even know that the Freemans had a daughter? Did they, there is a part of me that really isn't sure whether those 3 killers knew the girls would even be there that night. And so I'm inclined to think that might have been a surprise to them. Because why didn't they shoot them? Maybe they just wanted to rape them and they wanted to take them somewhere to do that. Certainly possible. But I'm not thinking that they knew that the 2 were going to be there. So there's that. So when I start thinking back to the Springfield 3, I start kind of thinking the same thing. And it's very clear from the description that the daughter and her friend, Suzanne and Stacy, really were not supposed to be there that night. They were not supposed to be there. So to take this to the fundamentals, we have to start thinking at, why do people hide people? Remember, we do disappearances at Unfound, even though we know many of them are murders. Why do murderers hide bodies, even though we know most murderers do not? What is the defining line between a murderer who leaves a body behind and a murderer who feels the need to take that body and hide it somewhere? Why? What is the difference? Well, over this time, I've come up with some different reasons. Number one, evidence. Kill somebody, you take the body and hide it somewhere because you're afraid through DNA or whatever else that if the investigators get to examine the body, they will find something that will connect the body to the killer. So, of course, the killer has to get rid of the body. That's, I think, what everybody first thinks of. Second possibility could be that leaving a body somewhere, just the mere fact that it's in that location, will lead directly to the killer. Now, the most obvious example is when a husband kills his wife. He's not going to leave the body in the house because what's he going to say? Yeah, while I was sleeping, somebody came in and killed my wife. Not going to do that. So that's why we have so many of these disappearances where the guy says, yeah, We went to bed. I got up the next morning. My wife was gone. I don't know where she went. Yeah, her car is here, her phone's, everything. I don't know. Because what he did is he killed her, took her somewhere, disposed of her, because he can't leave her in the house. So that's number 2. There's no actual evidence. It's just the mere fact of the body being there. The forensics don't even matter at that point. Number 3, and we certainly know this is true with serial killers, they take the bodies away and put them somewhere so they can go back to that body over and over to relive the experience. We know this is common. You know, I'm not an expert on serial killers, but I've read enough about them that they take the bodies, they put them out in the woods or put them in a storage unit, and once in a while they'll go there because it's a high for them. They get off on this type of stuff. Whereas leaving the body behind for the police to find it, they can't do that. So that's one of the reasons they go stash the body somewhere for their jollies. Another reason, and I think this is getting, of course, none of those really seem to fit the Springfield 3, my opinion. So I think it's number 4. And that is killers take bodies away. They take people away when they're just not sure what to do. In the moment, they know they have to get out of there. They know they're spending too much time in that place. Somebody's going to see their car out front or see lights in the house or something like that. But on the other hand, this wasn't in their plan. And they were there to maybe only rape and kill one woman. But now the daughter and her friend showed up. What are we going to do? Or what am I going to do? And so in the process, the killer or killers take all 3 and they say, we'll figure this out elsewhere. Because if we sit around and try to figure out this wasn't in the plan, this is more than we planned for whatever reason, they just decide to take them and end up killing them somewhere else after they had a chance to talk it over. And what are we going to do? Are we really going to kill these women right in this house? And man, it might lead us back to us. I think that is what happened here. My best guess, because looking at what the mother was doing and looking at the plans of what the girls had planned for that night, I think the daughter and her friend came home to something in progress. Now, what's everybody saying here before I continue on? Yeah, I wonder if the crank call several hours later was someone who knew something and was checking up to see who would answer the phone. Don't know. I'm saying the buried in concrete tape was given by a psychic, therefore it's certainly not reliable. Yes. The other 2 were collateral damage. I'm inclined to think that. Cranky, there's a new case that popped up in St. Louis recently. The police were tipped off 30 bodies buried in someone's backyard. Well, I'd like to, for what reason are they buried in that backyard is what I'd want to know. Rockford, there was evidence that 2 girls had been there long enough to remove their makeup and get ready for bed. All 3 cars were there, though. The perp would have seen the car when arriving to the house unless he was already in the house when the girls got home. I agree. And he just got there, and that's just what it seems like to me. This is something that did not go as planned. With the makeup and everything, maybe I'll have to correct myself on that. I did not read that in studying up for this. It's just hard for me to believe that somebody really showed up, or even a group, say 10 guys, showed up at this house and said, yeah, we're going to abduct all 3 of these women. That seems like not a very good plan. Remember, once again, I realize that there are only so many things that we can predict in getting into people's minds and things when it comes to disappearances. Why? Because with disappearances, as we've learned, over 360 disappearances, People's behavior are unpredictable. But what do we know? Killers, people like to get away with their crimes. So if you're planning out something and you think that those 3 women are going to be there, this is how you do it. It just seems unlikely. And this is why I say this is something went on in that house that was unplanned. Somebody went over there, 2 guys went over there, and the main focus was the mother. And you should know, the mother, as I was reading up, didn't seem to have the greatest taste in men. She'd been divorced a couple times. I read that she was trying to track the one ex-husband down or something like that, having to do with money or something like that. Maybe he makes a good suspect. Just seems to me that the mother was the focus because nobody could have known those girls were going to be there because they had these other plans. Mr. Ed, Clarice says replay. MT, I agree with you. The perp or perps were already in the house after when Susie and Stacy got home. What do you think of the search that was done about a year later? Not much. I agree, nurse. They were there for at least an hour. Rockford, 2 reputable and educational sources, Ken Maines and Pat Brown, have done deep dives, fascinating analysis, and they totally disagree with each other. Everybody's an expert, Rockford. Hey, if this were easy, everybody would be doing it. All I will say is you can all check my track record anytime you want to. I've been very vocal, at least not in the episodes, been on Patreon, and I do make predictions one way or the other of what has happened in all of Unfound's disappearances. My success rate of predicting is like in the high 90%. And the ones that I've gotten wrong are really ones that happened early in Unfound's existence where I was still trying to find my sea legs, like Esther Westenbarger and Crystal Morrison. So Cranky says, I think it was the daughter. Maybe there was some drama at one of the parties and were followed there. Very well may be. The only thing else I would say on this doesn't seem like teenager stuff. This does not, see, to me, if this was a teenager type of thing, teenagers are going to go in there and herd these 3 women out of there. Do teenagers necessarily have the patience for that? Teenagers are more impulsive. Teenagers rarely plan things out like that. I think that if it were teenagers that did this and showed up, that they would just have killed them right then and taken off. This seems to be more adult-like to me. Somebody who pulled this off, late 20s, into their 30s, having the patience to say, yeah, we're going to take these 3 women, because we have to believe that the women were alive. Why? There's no signs of violence inside the house. There's no blood. There's no this, no that, no lives, seemingly no knives lying out on the counter, no gunshot, no bullet holes in the walls, nothing. So these women were not carried out of the house. They walked out of the house. They might have done it at gunpoint. But that takes a lot of control and a lot of patience. Especially when you're doing it in the dark, and one of those girls could have run off into the night at any time. I don't really know what the light looks like at the night there, and street lights and all that situation. But you start taking 3 women who can walk, because if they were carried, we're talking then about 3 men doing this. Then once again, what are we talking about here? What are we talking about? If this was some vengeance against one of the girls, what seems, we do have a disappearance that it does involve a teenager, and Dominic Colley Grisham, of course, that was just included in the update episode. What most likely happened here, my idea, is that it was over a girl and he got lured out of his house. That is something that teenagers would do. That is a teenager type of thing. Now, could this have happened here? Did they get called at 2 a.m. to go outside? Maybe. But remember, this is 92. This is before cell phones. How did the person know that they were there when they were supposed to be other places? Did somebody follow them back to the house? Well, then, as Rockford brought up before, the person followed them back to the house and then allowed them to get their make-off off and everything and then did something. That seems unlikely. Wouldn't it just be better to go right in and do it right away? All with the understanding, we have to remember, when people do these things, they want to get away with them. And if the idea is that we're going to have to kill 3 women, then you really, really, really want to get away with it. The neighbors' houses aren't very close. You would almost have to walk outside to see what actually happened. I did look at the satellite view, Cranky. I thought that one house, I don't even know what direction that is. If you're looking from the street, that the house on the left isn't that far away. But, the neighbors didn't say they heard or saw anything. But this isn't Vegas. This isn't New York City, the city that never sleeps. This is Springfield, Missouri, where I'm guessing everybody goes to bed at 11. So I think this was all about Cheryl. I think that it had something maybe to do that some bad guy in her life, like I said, she seemed to have bad taste in men. Maybe some guy in her life, a new guy. Girls came home and interrupted what's going on. Or maybe they had just come home and the guy thought that Cheryl was home alone. Maybe she had told him, yeah, I'm just going to be painting, my daughter and her friend are going to Branson. I'm going to be home by myself. I'm going to be painting these cabinets. Some guy who's actually a rapist shows up at 2 a.m, to go in there and rape her. And what do you know? The girls were there. If mother killed, girls would know that they would, as far as escorting them out, maybe they used, the guy used the killing of the mother as a way to control the girls. You better do what I say or the mother gets it. I really don't think this had anything to do with the girls because this just doesn't seem like the work of teenagers. Now, if you're going to tell me that one of these girls was in a relationship with some 30-year-old, if that is out there, I didn't see it. But if it's out there somewhere and is believable, then I think I can alter, what I'm saying here, what I'm thinking. But I didn't see anything like that. I would also say this, given how we look at maybe like Missy Beaver's murder, how we look, I just recently talked about Liz Barraza's murder on a recent live show and had all sorts of crazy comments that I had to delete because somebody was rambling on and on, making all sorts of accusations and stuff. I'm thinking to myself, as this person's writing this stuff, if you know so much, this murder would be solved by now. And so I had to delete everything. I would also say if this were a guy that was really close to the girls and the mother, like had been around them for a while or went to high school with the girls or was a coworker of the mother, whatever she did or something, this would have been solved by now. I think that's also something that's very important. That, hopefully, and I realize no police department's perfect and everything else, but surely 3 women go missing and their cars are there. Even the thickest of investigators would know, this is a murder and we got to start looking at the men around these girls and the mother, and they found nothing. No names have leaked, nothing. So this is why I'm inclined to believe this was somebody new in the mother's life. So that's kind of where I am. I realize that I don't have all the facts. I know some of you are really, really, really up on this. And as Rockford said, Ken Maines and Pat Brown took a shot at these and came to totally different conclusions. Rockford, being that you've listened to, am I closer to Ken or am I closer to Pat with my thinking on this? I think this situation, somebody just met the mother, run into her somewhere, maybe at her work, as Amy's bringing up, And the guy's a bad guy. It's a simple bad guy. It happens. There are bad, of course, we know there are bad guys out there. And he says, she might have just said in passing, I'm going to be home alone tonight. I'm going to be doing a little work. And he thinks, light bulb goes off. I'm going to go over there and rape her. This is how predators think. And what do you know? He shows up at 2-something in the morning and the girls are there. Or he shows up and just as things are about to go down, the girls show up. And it very well could have been a situation where he didn't even intend on killing the mother. He was just going to break into the place, rape her, and leave. That happens too. But instead, he shows up. The girls see him. And it's like, well, sees his car or whatever else and says, I'm going to have to take everybody. I can't just leave the mother here and take the girls. I just can't take one of the girls and just can't take the mother. I have to take all three, and I'm going to have to figure this out right now. And probably with the threat of harming the girl's mother or harming the daughter, he got the mother and the friend to go along with this. If you run off, she's dead. Herds them into a car, gets one of them to drive. He sits in the back seat with the gun on one of them, and they go wherever. He has to kind of do it on the fly in the middle of the dark, in the middle of the night. That's the best I can do. We're Klein to Charles Cranky. So the mother's perpetrator was already there when the girls arrived. Things got out of hand a couple hours after everyone settled in. You're closer to Mainz. I'm closer to Brown. Okay, Rockford. Okay. Now, why hasn't it been solved after 33 years? Well, of course, the bodies haven't been found. And we should note, it's hard enough, to get rid of one body, although people successfully do it. 3 is quite a feat. With Oba Chandler, when he took those women out on the boat, he tried to weigh them down and drown them so they wouldn't be found. Well, they did come to the surface eventually. And, that's how he got caught. With these women, I'm going to guess they're on some private property. I think, as we've learned with Andrea Bowman, Zoe Campos, and others that Unfound is not featured, a lot of times these victims are going to be on the killer's property. And so I guess what I'm saying is whoever did this had to do a lot of digging. I also think when it comes to like the girls, when it comes to high school stuff like that, you would think, could somebody really keep their mouth shut like that? I don't think so. I just don't think so. Cranky, that's big mountain country also. Yeah. Could have taken them. Could have driven out into the mountains somewhere around there and killed them and dug the holes and put them in. Maybe. It's just then we have to start thinking, I can understand one burial site being missed in the woods out there. It's a little hard to understand 3. Or, he did, especially if he did one huge big hole and put all 3 of them in there once again. That's a lot of work. That is a lot of work to do out there. In the middle of nowhere, maybe in the middle of the night. Whereas if you can go back to your own place, if you have a big enough yard or something, then that's a little bit different. And maybe you can even take your time. Because if you do it out in the middle of the woods, you have to get it done all at one time. Once daylight comes out, who knows who's going to be out there. Whereas if it's your own property and it's somewhat secluded and you have a fence and you got 3 acres and you figure out how to, kill him if you shoot him or whatever, You got all the time in the world, especially if you know that you didn't leave any evidence behind and you really can't too closely be connected to the mother or the daughters. So I'm inclined to believe that they're on somebody's private property in Springfield somewhere. So that's where I am. I'm not saying that the police haven't gone down. I don't know what the police have done. I mean, I've known about their disappearances forever and ever, like I think many of you have. But I have to believe that the police have gone in this direction. But, you know, we meet people all sorts of ways. And it could have just been in passing. Cheryl's at the grocery store. She runs in. She's in, she's in the frozen food section. And some guy comes along, starts talking to her. They get along. They go out one time or something. And he's a bad guy. And she just slips, I'm going to be home by myself tonight. That's all it takes. That's how these predators think. Rockford says, I come back to this. How do you know those cars don't mean a dude or two come over? I think it's only because you know Susie's and Stacy's cars. Once again, how do you know those cars don't mean a dude or two came over? I think it's only because you know Susie's and Stacy's cars. I don't know how many cars were there. All I know is all their cars were there when everybody showed up. The question is this. Maybe I should phrase this a different way. Say, do you think Cheryl goes missing if the girls follow through with their plans and go to Branson or wherever? Do you think that Cheryl still goes missing? Or maybe they come home and she's murdered in her house. Maybe, that's a good kind of a thought experiment regarding the Springfield 3. Being that we know the girls were not supposed to be there, were not supposed to come home that night, say they don't come home. Does Cheryl still go missing? I think she does. Or at least is murdered in her house. I do. And I don't think that the girls go missing. You know why? Because they were still alive at 2:15 a.m. If somebody wanted to do something to them, the person had an opportunity wherever else they were. Could have stopped them on the street or something. Right? Where Cheryl's the one that was at the house all night. So I think that's a good thought experience too. So ask yourself, whatever you think you know about the Springfield 3. Does Cheryl go missing by herself, or is she murdered in her house, like found later, if the girls don't come home? I think the answer is yes. No, in fact, I think no one goes missing had the girls stayed at the party house. Okay, so you're opposite. So you think it's one of the girls. Okay. So you think one of the focus, one of the girls. Then, like I said, then I have to start thinking, why are they doing it at the house when these girls were out by themselves that night? Whereas it's Cheryl, this crime happened at the house. And Cheryl was the one who for sure was going to be at the house. If they were murdered, and they probably were. So that's my intake on Springfield 3. Obviously, a lot of different theories. Rockford has one. Obviously, some of you have others. And Ken Maines and Pat Brown. Maybe that's something I can do tomorrow. Rockford. Of course, I have a lot to do this week. Maybe I will partake in listening. I have maybe in the past read or listened to some things, but I don't think I would. Of course, I've heard Ken Maines talk about other things like the Zodiac Killer, but I don't think I've ever heard him talk about the Springfield 3. And I have to be honest, I don't think I've listened to anything Pat Brown has ever done. Robert, I think it was someone who had been at the party or talked to someone who had been. Okay. Let's move on to a couple things. Kind of already discussed the vet, and really I'm going to get into that on Thursday with Dr. Telesco, but I'll just read this story. Nearly a week after a video showing a man kicking a horse sparked outrage online, the search for Dr. Sean Frainer remains ongoing. According to the Lake Mead National Park Service's social media post Friday, Frainer, 56, was last seen around 9 a.m. on Sunday, April 6th, so we're over a week now, entering the Lake Mead recreation area through the Boulder entrance. Been there. His truck was later found parked at Hemingway Harbor with his keys, wallet, and cell phone inside. That's all bad news right there. As of Friday, the search was still active. Investigators said, you don't have to tell us who you are, but please tell us what you know. And like I said, we're going to go into this with Dr. Telesco. But anytime a wallet, phone, keys, things are left behind, I don't care if they're in a car, in an apartment, in a house, at work, or wherever else, bad. Bad, bad sign. And I have to believe that he was going out there, for some reason that was not good. And, this is one of those things. First of all, I was thinking, why was somebody videoing him in the first place? How exactly did this get caught on video? My understanding is this was a video by the person actually on the horse. If you don't know, the guy showed up there. He kind of was like, I guess, a veterinarian who, of course, with horses, I guess that would make sense, shows up. Of course, we think of veterinarians, I think for most people, it's like for dogs and cats. You take your dog somewhere, you take your cat. Well, with horses, you're really going to put them in the trailer and everything to take them down to the vet? Probably not. The vet's going to show up. So his vet shows up, something goes on, horse does something, veterinarian kicks the horse in the face. And while this was going on, he was being videoed. And yeah, I'm guessing there was something that caught somebody's eye on the property before this ever happened that they thought, you know what, I got to get this on video. I mean, what are the odds that they just happened to catch this guy kicking this horse in the face? They just happened to videoing when that happened. It leads me to believe something was going on before that said, you know what, this doesn't look right. And then what happened is the video goes viral. He starts getting a lot of threats. And then his car is seen out at Lake Mead in the National Park area. Once again, an area that's very familiar to me from my days living in Las Vegas. I realize there's going to probably be some people out there that think that this was some revenge, some animal lovers, got him and then ditched his car out at Lake Mead. We have to realize that guy's career is essentially over. And as I stated early on in this live show tonight, I'm not condoning kicking horses. But I also understand that horses can kill you, if they're lumbering around and are wild or scared or who knows what can happen. But he had to know, no matter, just put that all to the side. The guy had to know that his career was over. That gets something out there. You're not going to get any horse owner, cow owner, dog owner, cat owner, iguana owner to ever ask, to do business. You're never going to do business with you again, ever. And in addition, he's 56 years old. Maybe if he was a veterinarian who was 29 and this happened, well, I got my whole life in front of me. This was a mistake. Whatever the penalty is, I'll do it. I'll just have to do something else with my life. This guy's 56 and being 54, I know the feeling. You're thinking, well, I'm going to get sued. I'm going to lose my business and all this. And I think this is something that a 56-year-old would have a much, much, much tougher time letting go than a 29-year-old. Now, what was his plan going? I'm guessing, we have to remember a veterinarian is going to have access to a lot of drugs that they're drugs for animals, but you can overdose on those too. So that is something that comes to my mind as a possibility with this. But I completely reject the idea that, that this was, people tracked him down, and attacked him and made it look like he did commit suicide when really he was killed somewhere else by some, in a revenge or something. I just don't think that is a possibility at all. Clarice, it's funny your name's Clarice. I was actually watching Silence of the Lambs today. Ed, have you ever covered Ray Greigar's disappearance? I've not. I'm very familiar with it, if only for the reason that I'm from Pennsylvania, although not from the State College area. The lawyer who went missing, his car was found out in the State College area. And then his computer was found eventually, like in a creek or something like that, and they couldn't put it all back together. That's not been an episode of Unfound yet. In fact, I can say with a lot of assuredness that I've not reached out to anybody in his family. Maybe I should put it on the list. Ronald, but why such a huge age difference? 47 to 18. What are you asking about there, Ronald? Why such a huge age difference? 47 to 18. I'm not sure what you're asking about there. Be happy to answer. I'm just not clear. I'm thinking he's self-harmed. Yeah, me too, Amy, regarding the veterinarian. Same here. I would love for you to do a dive. All right, Clarice. Give it a shot. I guess we got to put Springfield 3 on the list now too, right? I obviously there's media, there's family members that are out there. CNN just did that article. I think they have some quotes from some family members. As is usually the situation, he was referring to the Springfield 3, 47 to 18, but why such a huge age difference? Well, the mother, yeah. Well, it's mother and daughter. I'm not sure that really matters, Ron, as far as that goes. It very well could be, if you want to go with Rockford, then you're thinking that the girls were the target and the mother was the collateral damage, I guess. Whereas if you're looking at it the way I look at it, I think the mother was the target and the girls were the collateral damage. I don't know if the Springfield 3 should be seen as a group where somebody showed up to kill all of them. Just my interpretation. And I maybe, even though Rockford, for example, and some other people obviously have some different opinions as well. I don't think either of us really believes that all three were the target. Somebody on all of that was collateral damage. Had to be disposed of because of what they witnessed, what they knew. But it's one of those things, Ron, where it's 33 years old and there very well may be facts that we don't know, not actually who did it, but just facts contained in the disappearance that we don't know. The police know them, we don't. Common. Or they're facts that nobody knows that are just completely bizarre, that there's no way you could ever predict what they are. It's hard to say. You're welcome, Ron. You're welcome. Good to see you here tonight. Hope you're doing well. If everybody doesn't know, I've known Ron since like elementary school. Although we haven't been in the same room in maybe 35 years or something, right, Ron? But I've known him since we were preteens. Yeah. Okay. So that's the veterinarian. I'm sure Dr. Telesco, as a horse owner, will have stuff to say on Thursday. So please tune in for that. There is this story. I'm going to read it. How much time we got? 20 minutes. Human remains found near Garnett, Kansas in 1973 have been positively identified as a Kansas City, Kansas teenager who disappeared in 1972. The Kansas Bureau of Investigation said the decomposing remains of an unidentified male were located 3 miles southeast of Garnett off 1550 Road on April 18th, 1973. I did the calculations. Garnett is about 30 miles from Kansas City. He was found wearing a brown corduroy jacket, green sleeved button shirt, jeans, black leather belt with large buckle, brown hiking boots, and a navy blue stocking cap. He was also wearing 2 gold rings with crosses, a ring with the number 78, and a silver chain with a large cross, according to the KBI. During an autopsy in 73, the coroner ruled the victim's manner of death a homicide due to signs of trauma. It was determined the victim was around 20 years old and believed to have had brown hair and a slender build. The KBI said over the years, many attempts were made to identify the remains and learn what happened to the victim. In 2024, DNA was extracted from the remains so that a DNA profile could be utilized for forensic genetic genealogy testing. Earlier this year, the KBI learned the testing had identified relatives of the unknown victim. And after further investigation, agents and the Anderson County Sheriff's Office located the victim's siblings. They conducted interviews and collected DNA from a sibling for comparison. The unidentified person was then positively identified as Jimmy Allen Dolison. The KBI said Dolison had been living in Kansas City, Kansas when he disappeared sometime in October or November of 72 when he was 16 years old. According to family members, he was reported missing by his parents, but the family never learned what happened. This is very confusing to me. The reason it's confusing is that he's 16 years old, so he's a minor. His remains were found only and when I say only, but only, quote unquote, only 30 miles from where he lived. There was obviously media attention on his disappearance. As it says over the years, they were trying to find out, for many years, of course, it's been 50 years, who this kid was. Did his family members really not know that his remains had been found? Because keep in mind, we have have all of these things, very unique characteristics of this kid. Brown corduroy jacket, green long-sleeved buttoned shirt, jeans, black leather belt with a large buckle, brown hiking boots, and a navy stocking cap. And then this jewelry that's, once again, very unique. 2 gold rings with crosses, a ring with the number 78, and a silver chain with a large cross, according to the KBI. Now, my guess is that information was surely put out all over Kansas back in 1972, 73. And the family members never saw that. Family members never saw that. It seems unlikely. Now, I know what it says. According to family members, he was reporting missing by his parents, but the family never learned what happened. What came to my mind in reading this, and this is a story that was posted in the discussion group, probably would have seen it anyway, but it seems to have gotten some national attention, and then it was posted in the discussion group. I have to admit that I came away from this article thinking maybe the family didn't want to know. I could understand if he runs away from Kansas and he ends up in New York City and it's like the same situation. His body's found somewhere, dressed the same way, it's trauma. I can understand that missing persons news in New York in the 1970s would not make it to the middle of the country, obviously. In fact, that wouldn't probably have happened until the internet came around 20 some years later. All right, so I understand that. But he was found within the media coverage of the city of Kansas City where his family lived. And not once did they see this news. And given that it does seem that there was trauma, that this was murder or something, I mean, that's what it means. I mean, when you read, anytime you read one of these stories, these news articles, and it says, during an autopsy in 73, the coroner ruled the victim's manner of death a homicide due to signs of trauma. The kid's missing. He's 16 years old. And his parents never see this article. They know their 16-year-old is missing. They surely gave a description and everything to police, or did they? Now I have to start wondering, they went and reported him missing, but how accurate of a description did they give? I know I'm going like into Cookville conspiracy land. It just seems to me that they should have known about this right away. Whether through the newspaper, through local news, it does seem like this got attention. The description of what the clothes were would not have rung a bell, especially the jewelry and everything. Something went on here that I'm inclined to maybe, I guess what I'm saying is I could be open to the idea. Are we sure that one of the other family members didn't do this and the other family members just kind of decided to look past it? This is something that has come to my mind regarding this. Because I can understand if it was like bones and there was no clothes, something along those lines, or the body had been burned or something. Then, if it's in the news, maybe then the family's like, well, and I don't know, we're sure it's our son or whoever. But being that you have the clothes, it seems like this should have been solved right away. Makes you want to take a gander at the parents for involvement. Exactly. I'm glad you said it, not me, Rockford. That maybe the only reason the parents went and filed the missing persons report is because they knew they had to, because, he wasn't going to be in school and they had to come up with some story. So they did that. And then when the news comes out, we'll just ignore it. Of course, not knowing that science would eventually catch up 20-some, of course, I guess 50 years later, but this kind of science has been around for 30 years now. Amy says that's concerning. It is. It is. So, maybe there's, I'd like to know more about the location instead of just saying, well, it was in Garnet. What were the circumstances of the body being found? Could they determine how long it had been there? When it says trauma, what are we talking about? Was it with a hammer? Did they determine, what he was hit with? To end in a sentence and a preposition, which is horrible. So look for that article. Once again, it was eventually identified as Jimmy Allen Dolison. I don't even know if he was on NamUs or not. I have not looked. Of course, this has been way before NamUs got started, but we know that they went and, put these things in eventually. I don't know if Jimmy made it onto NamUs or not. We don't, the other issue is what we don't have in here. And like I said, maybe there's something on newspapers.com. What exactly were the circumstances of a disappearance? Who was Jimmy Dolison? Who was he? What was he doing with his life at 16 years old? And what did his family say about him going missing? Did they say he ran away? And so then I have to start asking, okay, ran away and just happened to run into a murderer? That seems unlikely. Just putting it out there. So check that out. Once again, if you want to check that article out, maybe there's some things being written on Web Sleuths now. Maybe you want to go to newspapers.com to see if there were any stories written about Jimmy Dolison in the Kansas City area from back in the 70s. Maybe you want to go, I'll check that out. Dollison. All right, how much time we got? We got 10 minutes. I did get a letter from Steve Panky, and I can at least read some of it. First of all, he's expressing guilt about not preventing an incident. Why he brought this up, I don't know. But here's what he wrote. He wrote about, let me see what he wrote here. I got the letters right here. He wrote about, in 1960, I was 9 years old. At church, two brothers, ages 12 and 14, threatened to steal an airplane. I did not say anything. The boys died when the airplane crashed. It was front page news in the Pomona, California newspaper. My father preached at their funeral. I felt guilty for keeping quiet. So I looked this up. This happened. June 3rd, 1960, James A. McDonald, 14, and his 12-year-old brother Thomas of Pomona took their dog and ran away from home. They were determined to steal a plane. Destination unknown. Several months before, someone had caught them hot wiring a plane at Cable Airport in Upland. But on this night, they were successful in starting a Piper Tri-Pacer owned by a construction company. About 10 minutes after takeoff, the plane crashed in a recreation yard at Emerson Junior High at Lincoln and Town Avenues in Pomona, killing the boys and their dog. They were typical youngsters, no more interested in flying than others, their mother, Katie, said. Steve is saying he knew these kids. I don't know whether I believe him or not. Just reading what he's writing. If I can read something that isn't defamatory towards somebody, I'll read it. So that was what he wrote first. Then he wrote something about mentioned how he wrote this fiction novel. I'll move past that, but I'll move on to this. In 1977, the rape and murder of the store manager Mary Pierce, not the tennis player, was consistent with statements I had heard earlier at Sunnyview Church. I left the church in 72. The Matthews moved to Greeley in 1978, according to their testimonies. In 1981, I was an NLRB judgment against Russ Ross. You all know about this, his lawsuit against 7-Up. In 2009, DNA proved Pierce was murdered by a man with a long criminal history. I was wrong about the church involvement in Pierce's case. I often assume, and of course, as all of you know, when it comes to Steve's theory regarding Janelle's murder, of course, he's in jail for her murder. He claims he's innocent. He still continues to believe that Janelle's murder had something to do with the Sunnyview Church. That's just his opinion. But he admits that he was wrong about Mary Pierce. He thought that her murder was connected to the Sunnyview Church as well. It was not, and he admits it in this letter. Also, what else do I want to say? He tells me my attorney's opening brief is due at the end of May before the Colorado Court of Appeals. The appeals decisions usually take 1 to 2 years. He says that his mother is in poor health. His mother is 94 years old. And he also says that he's a model prisoner and they've given him the job of taking care of a blind inmate who is a vulnerable adult. So that is what Steve had to say this time around. He did send me another letter that I got today. Let me see if there's anything in there. He also once again brings up the opening brief at the Colorado Court of Appeals. He will continue to appeal my case even in the event of my death because I am innocent. That's what Steve says. He says he wants everybody to know that he is almost 74 and he's at peace with God. If I die in the near future, I die innocent of any crime related to Janelle Matthews. So that's what Steve had to write this time around. So I guess I'm due to write him back. I guess I'll have to come up with something to say and something to ask. So, and some of you, if you're new to the live show, yes, I maintain, it's going to be coming up on 2 years this summer. I maintain a pen pal relationship with convicted murderer Steve Panky. Almost all of you know that he appeared on Unfound back in 2019 and then was eventually convicted of Janelle Matthews' murder in 2022. And I decided early on that I would, if he did get convicted and went to jail, I decided early on that I would try to strike up some conversation with him, and in an event to either get information from him that proves that he actually really did do it, even though I don't think that the prosecution did do that, the jury thought otherwise. Or will it be something along the lines that I come across something that could lead to who actually did kill Janelle if Steve didn't do it? So if you're wondering why I'm doing that, that's the reason. And Steve realizes that. In fact, I've even told him that, I don't know if you did it or not. So don't think that this is some sort of Stockholm syndrome or anything. It very well may be that Steve killed Janelle, and if that's really, really what happened, then I'm fine with that. I want you to know, I'm not trying to prove his innocence. If Steve wants forgiveness by God, then why not just tell the entire story? I know. Well, he says he didn't do it, Ron. So, I guess he's not going to admit to something he didn't do. What does Ed think about Steve's innocence? I will just say there were a lot of people who could have killed Janelle. And now that I've seen the discovery materials, there are 6 or 7 different suspects who make better persons of interest than Steve Panky ever could for Janelle's murder. That doesn't mean Steve didn't do it. But if you put all of the facts of each of those guys in a list, I think you would say at least 3 or 4 of those other guys make better suspects than Steve. Because remember, we have no science, we have no forensics, nothing. So that's what I think. And I continue to say that even though the jury convicted Steve, that I think they left it wide open that a variety of people could have killed him. And to me, that's reasonable doubt. And so because of that, it's very possible that an innocent person is in jail, and that person is Steve Panky. That's because there's no science that says he did it. The only reason I think people think that he did it is because he's a weirdo. I think that is it for tonight. So let's go to Friday's episode. This is a disappearance I've known about for a long time. I don't know why. Kind of like Wendy Gessing's, I guess. But the disappearance of either way, the dog didn't deserve that death. Am I still on the same page? You're on the wrong page, Ronald. Steve Panky actually allegedly killed a little girl in Colorado in 1984. And then she was found, and he went to trial in 2022 and was convicted. You can look him up, Janelle Matthews. It has its own Wikipedia page if you want to catch up on it, Ron. This Friday, disappearance I've known about for a while. Richard Hitchcock. How many of you are familiar? Of course, you know the last name from the filmmaker, but this guy's name is Richard Hitchcock. He's 21-year-old, 22-year-old. He went missing on December 22nd of 1990. So over 34 years ago. From Allegan, Michigan. The guests are his cousin Kelly and his younger brother Steve. I just did their interviews this evening. They both did fantastic jobs. This is a situation where it's kind of like TJ Murray's. He went to a bar, got kicked out of that bar, and then 3 witnesses said that Richard ran down the street, jumped a fence, and jumped into the river that was there. Of course, they searched the river. Nothing was found. The problem is that these 3 witnesses did not come forward right away. And on top of that, these 3 witnesses locally were known as being 3 fairly rough guys. And one of the guys just happens to be the bouncer who kicked Richard out of this lounge. And if you think that, just trying to make things conspiracy oriented for conspiracy's sake, there have been digs, at least on one private property. The police seem to be fairly sure that the facts of that night are not the facts of that night. What is the popular story regarding Richard's disappearance is probably not true. You will have to make that decision for yourself on Friday. Richard Hitchcock, December 22nd, 1990, from Allegan, Michigan. His cousin Kelly, his brother Steve are the guests. And yes, it is on NamUs, and yes, it's on the Charlie Project. Rockford says you had me at bar disappearance. We've covered a few of them. That is certainly true. From Justin Gaines, TJ Murray, and many others. Kyle Fleischman, I guess, of course, with you, Rockford. Sounds like a humdinger, Ed. It very well could be. You can decide on that Friday. That's all I got. We ran over by a couple minutes tonight, but hope you enjoyed it. I always do my best in entertaining you and informing you on these live shows. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Keep your heads on swivels out there. And Charlie, say hi to your sons for me. Good night.